It's the Controller Bob, Captain Joel Show. Controller Bob and Captain Joel Show. Controller Bob and Captain Joel. Controller Bob and Captain Joel Show.
All right, sir. Aloha.
Hold on a sec. I gotta put my headphones on.
Episode 3.
Oh, yeah, episode 3? Okay.
Every day's an episode with you.
Hey, excuse me while I pre-flight. I'm looking at the TAF. You know how often the TAF comes out? Hey, everybody, don't answer that question as I touch him one more time for episode 3.
It's Aloha, Bob.
Captain Joel, or what are we gonna call it? Whatever you want to call it. Aloha, Bob.
We're still taking votes.
Yeah, we're still taking votes. So we'll just keep going with this. Have fun with that, right? Because there's no real answers of this. So here's a question for you.
All right.
What is your biggest complaint with controllers?
I ride with one in the airplane.
It's a big one.
Well, teaching you how to fly, your radio phraseology is awful.
So, since you're complaining about your controller,
he wouldn't call Craig Tower. He said, "Hey, Keith, how you doing?"
So when we started flying together, obviously radio wasn't an issue for me. As I'm finding out, I shouldn't be so surprised that a lot of people are very afraid to talk on the radio, more than I thought.
The majority of pilots that trained, they freeze when they push the talk, and they don't know what to say.
Right.
And
is that a hard thing to teach
pilots
to do? I mean, students and stuff to talk on the radio.
It's another step.
Yeah.
It's a plateau that you got to overcome, and the only way to do it is to get in the airplane and do it. And back in the Radio Shack days, I told people to go buy the cheapest radio scanner they could,
right,
and plug it in at the house and listen to airplanes.
That was back in 1950.
Yeah, one of those days.
Oh yeah,
I worked at Radio Shack. That's how I got through flight school. 5 years I worked.
But here's a question for you though: how often does that wasn't an issue for me when I started talking radio? That's what I do. I talk on the radio, so that was an issue. Is it difficult? I mean, how much? I can tell you from a controller standpoint when you're flying.
Are you touching me again? I'm sorry. The difficulty is
stay on subject.
I try to explain when you're in an airplane, you're doing the same thing. Think of when you're in an airplane, you're sitting on the hold short.
Right.
What do you want to do and where you want to go?
Right.
Just like when you order a pizza.
Yeah, but what
do you want on the pizza and where do you live?
It's about me. It's not about the student. You sit there and fly for many hours.
Many.
What are the things that controllers do that kind of give you
Well, when they tell me to turn right for traffic, and I see the traffic on the radar, and he's already out of my way, and next thing I know, I'm on this vector for 20 miles.
Right.
Now, I don't see the big picture and what's going on, whether he's sending me over in this vector because he's putting me in line behind a 737 30 miles down the road because I'm going to Atlanta.
Right.
I don't know the big picture, but sometimes I get radar vectors for 20 miles out of my way, and it drives me crazy.
It does drive you crazy.
And then other times, I see the Delta jet over on my right, and I need to get out of his way.
Is it consistent, or do you find that that's kind of a routine thing you see a lot of when you're flying?
Well, the routine thing is when I'm flying and it's a beautiful day and I'm IFR, because that's the easiest way to fly, or I'm going to 18,000 feet or above, and you got to fly that way, is they'll give me radar vectors over 30 miles out of the way because it's in the departure corridor. And that's happened coming out of Jacksonville. It's happened coming out of Atlanta. They'll send you on a 180-degree heading for 30 miles south of Atlanta because that's where they send everybody.
Right.
And that
is a big picture thing, though.
That's the big picture thing.
Right. So not everybody gets direct.
Well, when I'm with you, we get direct.
Well, but that's different. But what I'm saying is not everybody gets direct. And you've talked about getting vectors and when you see the guy and these kind of things. I can tell you from my seat, there are a lot of times we're competing with so many different things in our brain, and the list is constantly changing. It happens, you'll put a guy on a vector, and you may not be as quick to go back to him and get him back to where you wanted to go after you resolve the issue because something else is competing for your attention and these things. It is a crazy number of priorities that are rolling through. So as a pilot, I can see where you would go, why am I not going back, turning this direction? And why is he not seeing it? And why has that controller not got us back on course?
And there's sometimes if I'm coming back into the Jacksonville area and I'm coming from the north, out of Savannah, they want to send me out to the intersection out offshore. I can't remember what it is.
So a lot of times procedures are developed in air traffic to kind of keep everybody segregated so that you don't have a lot of conflicts. Those procedures are in place to everybody going south is on this route and everybody going north is on this, and we're trying to keep people segregated. So as you want to fly over here, you might be a salmon, swimming upstream, and that's just not a healthy place to be. That's why you get a lot of times reroutes, especially in departure quarters and arrival quarters, because of the volume and those kind of things. So that would be an answer to your question of a complaint the controllers have.
Yeah.
Okay. Would that make sense?
Well, yeah. And a lot of times from coming out of the ones coming out of Nashville, they send you to the southeast, and I can't remember the departure.
Yeah.
But I may be going 30 degrees to the left
Now,
to where I'm going.
Don't understand that there are times when you forget, and it's like, hey, I'm sorry, and you get you back on course, and that would be what you were talking about there, right?
That's when you just
Right.
say, hey, how about direct?
Right, and so you can always, if you felt as though, and this is kind of a something to try and think about, if you get stuff like that and you think he's forgotten, you just, hey, have any chance I can get back on course? And more often I go, oh yeah, go ahead and go back on course. That would help, right?
It would help.
You don't have to complain about me anymore then.
Well, yeah. Oh, and another thing is if you got some weather out there, and I try to avoid, if I got a load of passengers in the back, I'm all about passenger comfort. And I will avoid a cloud if I can, if it takes me 5 or 10 degrees in either direction. And if it's
Right.
less than 10 degrees, I just do it and don't say anything. I have been scolded in a few different approaches.
So what did you learn by that?
You need to ask.
Yeah. If you're going to deviate, you got to ask. Even VFR guys, not so much, because obviously you have to see and avoid, and we're not, unless you're in, I'll say, a Bravo or a Charlie or something along those lines. That's not a big issue, but generally speaking, with VFR, we're just monitoring to see where you're going and those kind of things. I'd like to kind of keep an eye on what you're doing, but deviating obviously is something you have to do, especially when you're doing practice approaches too. How many times have you been vectored into a cloud when you were with a VFR pilot in VFR conditions, trying to,
Right, and then you try to stay out of it.
You got to tell them, can't do it.
Can't
those are
do it,
big
or
deals.
I got to choose
Yeah.
a different altitude.
So what else do you want to know about controllers that you complain about, other than me personally?
I want to know how you get breaks what as a controller.
Okay.
How long do you work before you get a break?
Right,
Because
so-
there's required.
That's correct.
Uh,
So generally speaking, not generally, it's studies that determine after 2 hours, it's probably a good idea for you to get a break. So no controller should work more than 2 hours at one point, because you get brain fatigue, and you don't want that. You want to make sure that you have you're up to speed and fresh. And there are many times
That's more time than I thought.
Yeah,
but 2 hours.
2 hours,
Sort of like a
yeah.
2-hour flight. You get
2-hour flight.
You get
Exactly
fatigued.
right. You get tired. My first hour and a half flight with you, I was just botching up the landings, and you said you're tired, and that's a perfect example. You know what? That's about the time they've done those studies to determine that you just don't want to work beyond that if you can avoid it. There are times when that happens, obviously, but generally speaking, that's the fatigue factor starts setting in. I mean, there was a guy that was talking, and I was trying to get him out, and he was coming to my 2 hours, and he was just cooked. He was done, and we just had to kind of push him off to the side.
all right. So when the controller swaps out,
Right.
and we've heard it on the frequencies, swapping out controllers, and
Right.
it takes a few minutes. What's the procedure,
So-
behind the scenes procedure for
Well,
swapping
that's
a
interesting.
controller out?
So you're talking about a controller change, and everybody's heard it before, controller changes. So here's the procedure for the controller change. You're working airplanes, and I'm going to come get him out of position. I'll stand by him for a couple minutes to kind of get an idea of what's happening. Before I even do that, I'm looking at all the notices and anything that's changed, status of equipment, status of military operating areas, special use airspace, anything funky that might be going on, I'll get myself briefed on. Then I'll stand behind him and watch him work for a variety. Sometimes it's for several minutes. Sometimes you only have one airplane and it doesn't require that much time. At that point, then I'll take my headset and I'll plug in with you. I'm doing that anyways. I'm listening, trying to get an idea exactly what you're doing and kind of your plan and all that stuff. Once that has occurred, I'll let you know, hey, I'm ready to, and you'll then go ahead and start briefing me. And we have a checklist, just like you do in an airplane, talking about all the different things.
That's interesting.
Right. So you'll hear, for example, next time you go flying or you're listening online or something like that, and you'll hear blah, 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 and there'll be a quiet, nothing going on for a period of time. And then all of a sudden, a new voice comes on. This is what's happening. I'll go, okay, I got it. All right, tell me. So you go, all right, first off, you go this, and you go through that item. And I'll if you want, I'll bring a checklist in and we can go through that and do a simulated checklist. Yeah, that would be fun. I wasn't prepared this time. You kind of threw that at me. But, it's typical for you.
That's why we're in radio.
Right. That's why we're in radio, not on TV, right? So, anyway, we'll go through the checklist. It takes, and sometimes it will last a couple minutes. Sometimes it's relatively quick, obviously, depending on how busy it is. And, of course, if it's really busy, you don't get involved in that. Because there's a flow and there's a rhythm and a frequency, and you want to keep that going, and changing controllers can sometimes affect that rhythm. So you'll pick a good opportunity when you have it to make that briefing and go through those items and make sure, and the final thing is, all right, and then I'll say, I got it, and then you'll slide out of the radar scope or out of the position in a tower, and then I'll go in there and I'll start picking up and going, and then you'll monitor me for about 2 or 3 minutes because you want to make sure that I have got the picture. If there are any questions that I have, you're right there because you've been working. Hey, what? Tell me about that again. And so that's how that controller change takes place. So when you ever hear frequency, that's kind of the procedure how it takes. It's interesting. So back in the day, before they would go, before we had checklists and stuff, this is way, way back. This is no slop, no chop, strips don't lie because we're using paper strips. You got it. And woo. Okay. But that's long.
They're still using paper strips?
Yeah, some facilities do. It's valuable because it gives you the information you need. Some of them don't. Some facilities don't. Some facilities still do. It's tough and small.
I have a few paper strips that I've been given on my flights over the years because they throw them out.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll bring those for
I'll
another
bring
show.
those too for another episode.
A little show and tell.
Yeah, a little show and tell. Would you like show and tells?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was my favorite day at school.
Was it really?
Yeah.
What day was you?
The best one I remember this 5th grade.
Okay.
The best show and tell is we always took.
Is this aviation related, by the way?
No, this is farm related.
This is farm related.
Yeah.
But this is
show
an
and tell.
aviation
Yeah,
show.
well.
As you can see, we're sporting the gear, right? This is not farming with Joel.
All right. Well, all right. So
We're not
anyhow, the
talking
best
about
show
that.
and tell is
Okay, go ahead. Tell your
we
farm story.
always butchered a cow once a year for meat for the family.
Did you actually butcher it, or did you
No,
get
well,
the
we
meat to it?
did when I was really little, but
Okay.
as
Is that why you're
as the
scarred
butcher shop
as a child? As an
yeah,
adult?
Okay,
gotcha.
I got to pull
Yeah.
the trigger once or twice.
Oh boy.
So
Now you take it out on me.
Betsy was good,
That was-
Zero.
Did you name your cows?
Oh yeah.
Do you name your airplanes?
Oh yeah.
You do.
Oh yeah.
So what was 715 Quebec? Now it's 23 Mike Zulu. Did you have a name?
I
for
don't
that
remember the name for that one.
one? What about?
Well, I do remember it because over here, if everybody can scan over, there's the wheel pant, but it was mustard yellow,
Yeah.
so we did call it mustard.
Did you really?
Yeah. And then the other one, which I still have, which 238, we call that the buttery nipple because it's butterscotch yellow, so we called it the buttery nipple.
Which is a beverage, by the way.
It is a beverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one too.
Is it
it's
really?
a good after
Well,
after dinner beverage.
I know about it, but I'm not a big. I've heard about it. I've not gone there. But okay, but it's not necessarily names. You don't put your name on the side of the airplane.
No. I have seen some people like to put their name and stencil it on the side of their airplanes, which is cool.
Yeah. Oh.
We could put a Aloha Bob on the side of yours if you like.
Hey, you know what? Let's do this. Why don't we take a Sharpie on one of the Cessnas, and then we'll just like the fighter pilot, and I'll have it right there. What do you think of that idea?
Oh yeah.
You think that'd go over very well?
Like
All your renters are going to go, what is going on?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I might lose a renter or two.
You think so? Yeah, right. Well, I'm not getting in that airplane. I've seen his flying.
Yeah.
Right? What else do you want to know? So anyway, here's a quick question. So Jason gave me this cup to drink out of, and he goes, what's your favorite movie? And of course, Airplane was my favorite movie, of
Oh yeah.
course.
And why would that be?
Well, I don't know. It's something to do with aviation. So I'm working across the Gulf of Mexico. It's evening time, nothing going on. It's 200 miles of dead time. You just monitoring guys. They're all
high altitude.
high altitude, 35, 37.
They're all doing the same speed.
You're doing this, and it gets really quiet. on the frequency. And we would try to get the frequency really quiet. And we would say, how long do you think we keep this frequency from somebody saying, hey, you still there? Because when you're listening on the radio.
At 3 in the morning when you're coming home.
It's
the
tough.
old check running days.
Yeah, it's tough,
At 3
right?
in the morning. Yeah.
And so
I used to listen to the ADF for those pilots that know what an ADF
yeah.
is. We used to tune in Disney, AM Disney, which was 1090 or whatever it was, and that's the only thing that would keep us up.
Just to have something to listen to.
Just to have some noise
right.
in the cockpit.
Well, we keep the frequency quiet. Invariably, somebody's going to get on the frequency and say, hey, are you still there? And so me being stupid would go, shh, I'm watching an in-flight movie. And let that one sit out there for a while.
Oh, my.
Guess what happened next? What's the movie? Well, of course, I go, well, airplane, of course. Of course, everybody, it's required reading. I think it's part of the ACS, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Isn't it in one of the asterisk chapters in MzeroA's boot camp for passing your private pilot check ride? You got to watch the movie.
You got to watch Airplane.
Right?
Right.
So, and people are going online right now going, I missed that episode. So they're quickly scanning it down. It's all the way at the bottom. Keep going. It's all the way down, and you'll see it. Trust me, it'll be there. And anyway, so next thing you know, 20 minutes, guy would go, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, off the tower. And the next line, because everybody's seen it,
Yeah. Well, it's a classic, and we've all seen it.
Oh, jeez, what can you make out of this? And a brooch, a pterodactyl, I mean, it just.
The autopilot was good.
It was on the frequency. I was dying laughing, trying not to make a scene. I was doing this, kind of laughing so hard. That was way back. There's no recordings of that, but it's a story. It was pretty funny, but that was way back in the day.
That's some good memories, Bob.
It was fun. That was a lot of times. So anyway, hey, I hope you had fun today.
Yeah, it's been a good episode.
Yeah. Did you like that?
Yeah,
You notice how
I think it'll work.
I quickly transferred off the shooting the cow story because we just don't going to talk about that.
Hey, all right, it's all good.
I just don't want to talk about shooting the cow.
We won't talk about
All
your.
right. Yeah, it's just not. I'm very traumatized by that. All right, I got a vision in my head. But anyway, look for next episode. I really appreciate you watching.
And remember,
A good
pilot
is
always learning.
Learning. That's right.